The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
All right, time to check in with CoinDesk Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor Nick Day, who's also the editor of CoinDesk's The State of Crypto newsletter. Good morning, Nick. All right, so the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust discount to net asset value falling to its lowest level in a month ahead of oral arguments in federal court related to Grayscale's lawsuit against the SEC. Note to viewers, Grayscale and CoinDesk are both owned by DCG. Nick, what are the expectations ahead?
Hey, good morning. Yeah, so in a little under half an hour, the DC Appeals Court is going to kick off. There is, I believe, a different case right before Grayscale, so might be a little bit of time before we get to Grayscale. But basically, the company is going to argue that the SEC has been arbitrary in how it approaches Bitcoin ETF approvals. They're going to say that the fact that Bitcoin futures ETFs exist, but not any spot market ETFs, mean that the SEC has kind of picked a specific product, but it's being inconsistent in how it okays these types of products. Basically the argument being that if you can easily manipulate the Bitcoin spot market prices, what's stopping you from easily manipulating Bitcoin futures market prices? The SEC, for its part, is going to argue that they're very different, that spot market products are based on spot markets. They're based on Bitcoin, whose price is going to trade on exchanges, some that are in the US, some that are not, some that are regulated, some that are not. Whereas Bitcoin futures ETFs are based on products that are settled in cash and traded solely on CME. It's going to be, I imagine we're going to hear a lot about the way these types of products are structured, about surveillance sharing agreements and market manipulation concerns. And, it doesn't seem like we'll have an actual decision today, but it'll be interesting to see, if the judges ask any questions or how they approach it, over the course of it should be a fairly short hearing from what I understand.
Well, it seems as if the Alameda people would be thrilled if this turned into an ETF, according to this other case. But moving on to Voyager, because this was kind of an interesting turn of events, isn't it? That the judge seems to be taking Voyager's side on it against the SEC and saying, hey, you know what? Binance wants to buy it. Why not? Is that the proper reading of what's going on here?
I think it's more of a case of he doesn't know what the SEC is doing in terms of timeline. So the context here is, of course, Voyager and Binance US have been, in a multi-day hearing at this point to decide whether or not the court should approve Voyager's restructuring plan, its bankruptcy restructuring plan, to sell itself to Binance US. Now, the SEC has objected on a couple of different points. One being, we talked about this last week and yesterday even, but SEC staff believe that Binance US might be operating an unregistered securities exchange. They believe that the VGX token issued by Voyager might be an unregistered securities offering. They've expressed as much to the judge. And last week, the judge, basically raked the SEC over coals, saying he didn't know, he didn't have any guidance from the SEC. He didn't have any specifics as to what they were objecting to. Yesterday, the SEC also objected to some of the disclosures made in presenting this plan to creditors. And once again, the judge had an issue with how much information the SEC has shared. And his key point seemed to be that the SEC has the ability to conduct rulemaking and evaluate these kinds of things, but under a bankruptcy situation, he doesn't know how long it's going to take, and he can't prolong a proceeding indefinitely while the SEC does its investigations or whatever it is they're doing. So his concern is that he needs to move this bankruptcy proceeding along. He needs to get it to a point where creditors can start recovering some of their funds. Whereas if he waits for the SEC, it could take a while. He even points out that it could, it could take the SEC, Congress, and other regulators coming to, a party and organizing, figuring out who has what jurisdiction, and that's not going to happen anytime soon at all. So the judge is concerned mainly from that perspective, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, one other story we're watching this week is the White House press secretary said that the presidential administration is watching Silvergate situation. What did she have to say?
Yeah, so this was during a press briefing yesterday. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said that the White House is aware of it and monitoring the situation. She pointed out that a number of crypto companies have had issues over the last couple of months, and that's obviously very true. We're covering a number of bankruptcies alone. The big thing is that she said that U.S. President Joe Biden has called on Congress to do something, and he will continue to do so. So that seems to be where we are. If Congress acts, great. Right now, it's still early days in the session. And she also pointed out that bank regulators have been warning about how banks might get into crypto. So, not a whole lot new there, but it is striking that the White House is, clearly paying attention.
Certainly, but still no framework as to how any sort of regulatory clarity will come about. All right, Nick, thank you so much. That was CoinDesk Managing Editor of Global Policy and Regulation, Nick Day. Don't forget to sign up for the State of Crypto newsletter on CoinDesk.com.